What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Today, I'm going to be talking about everyone's favorite topic, Aaron Rodgers, which is basically the equivalent of me coming on here and spitting politics for the next 20 minutes or so, because that's usually about how divisive a topic that Aaron Rodgers is, for better or worse. But I want to go over Aaron and his play so far and give my honest, forthright assessment of where he is at and how he has been affecting, for good or bad, this team so far in 2022. So we will get there in just a moment. But before I do want to go through some of my grades. Grades will be up on Friday on PackerReport.com. You can check the full grades out there every single week, but I always like to go through my top graded players, my lowest graded players. So without further ado, top 3 graded players on offense this week: Aaron Jones plus 0.6, Allen Lazard plus 0.25, and Aaron Rodgers plus 0.1. A lot more on that in just a moment. Romeo Doubs, my lowest graded offensive player, negative 1.05. Yosh Nijman, negative 1.0. And Elgton Jenkins, negative 0.5. So Yosh, a little bit of struggles moving from left to right. I thought overall he held up okay. A couple miscues here and there, but I thought for him making that switch for the first time, I would give that, yes, it's a negative grade, second lowest grade, but I was pleasantly surprised overall with how that switch went, for that being his first week. I think he's going to continue to get better over there if he can stay in one spot and stay on the right side. I didn't have any major concerns like, all right, this is too much for him or he can't do it moving forward. I think he's going to be just fine. Jenkins, still negative, still my third lowest graded offensive player this week. And that was sort of my concern going in was, all right, if he moves from right tackle to left guard back to his natural spot, is it just all of a sudden fixed, or are there still going to be issues? And it was better, and his run blocking still looks pretty darn good, but in pass protection, still some issues, still some miscues, and still some things that he needs to get cleaned up. Doesn't quite look himself. A little bit better, but still a ways to go for Elgton Jenkins, and Green Bay severely needs him to get back to playing the way that he was prior to his ACL injury. That's no small task. That's no easy ask, but they need him to play better, and he just hasn't been the same Elgton Jenkins so far since coming back from injury. Positive graded or highest graded defensive players: Devondre Campbell plus 1.2. Pick 6 is always going to help with that score. Kenny Clark plus 1.15. PFF and I actually disagreed pretty vehemently on Kenny Clark this week. They had him more around a neutral grade. I thought he was fantastic, held up all day long. I think PFF had him with 5 pressures, but I just thought he was fantastic in the game, and really, they couldn't move him. There was a couple reps that maybe he lost in a very minor way, but overall, just a fantastic game from Kenny once again. And then extremely excited about Quay Walker, my third highest rated offensive or defensive player, with a plus 0.9 this week. And then lastly, lowest graded defensive players: Eric Stokes, negative 2.05, Ladarius Hamilton, negative 0.5, and Jair Alexander, negative 0.4. Jair, a couple big completions to Terry McLaurin, the touchdown, the final play where they were trying to run out clock, a couple other ones. So a little bit of a tough day for Jair. Hamilton did not ease any concerns that he could be the guy instead of Jonathan Garvin, and with Tipa out with injury. Tipa hasn't played a defensive snap this year yet, which is kind of crazy. Now he's out with injury as well, but Ladarius Hamilton did not have a good first start or initial impression to the 2022 season. And then Eric Stokes, rough game for Eric Stokes. And listen, there's a lot that he did in coverage. I like him playing press man coverage. He was meant for press man coverage. And with him playing more man-to-man, he looks just more confident, more calm, less panicky, etc. I think that is going to be something that fits him well. And I think overall, he is a solid number 2 corner when it just comes to man coverage. However, I would say he's a below average zone corner, and he is a brutally terrible run defender right now. And I don't think it's always been that way. But the crazy thing with Stokes is, you might say, Andy, well, show me a bunch of plays where he's missing tackles. And there's not a lot of those. There's some, certainly. He's not the most aggressive physical tackler in the world. But usually when he's involved in the play, he's okay. He's a fine tackler. He's meh. You're not looking at him and being wow, that's a terrible tackling corner. That's not Eric Stokes. but the willingness is the issue. There are plays where he is barely jogging to the play, much less rallying to the football. He is completely disinterested in going and getting his hands dirty, whatever cliche you want to use. Like, he is just not getting involved in run defense to a level that I haven't seen since Clinton-Dix. And that's just unacceptable. That can't happen. This defense needs all 11 guys rallying to the football. And if you're thinking like, Andy, you're being too harsh and like whatever, just know that by the end of the game, and I had already actually tweeted out while I was going through Stokes' grades before I even finished the game about how he was struggling in run defense. I didn't even know that at the point when I tweeted it out. At the end of the game, when Washington was trying to run the clock out, they took Stokes off the field. Rasul Douglas became the base corner in their run defense sets, basically. So they took Stokes off the field. They basically demoted him. As Zach Cruz pointed out, those are his first snaps that he didn't play all season long. They took him off the field because they didn't trust him as a run defender. You could argue, okay, maybe they just trusted Rasul more, which fine, they should. Rasul Douglas is a tremendous run defending, maybe tremendous is strong, but like he's a really sound run defending corner. Stokes completely disinterested. They made the right move there, but he basically got demoted as a run defending corner and was no longer in base sets as a corner. It was Douglas and Jair. So right now it would seem, and maybe things will change this coming week against the Bills, we'll see, but it would seem that your starting corners right now are Douglas and Jair, and then Stokes comes in and one of those guys is going to move to the inside moving forward. They'll probably have Jair go with, Stephon Diggs would be my guess this coming week. Struggled a little bit with Terry McLaurin. It doesn't get any easier this week with Stephon Diggs, but I would still expect that to be the matchup for Jair. And then if Jair's on the outside on Diggs, that would put Douglas in the slot and then Stokes on the other. But Stokes got demoted. He is no longer, or at least wasn't, by the end of the game against Washington, the base defender, which is significant. It's noteworthy. And you watch him play. And like I said, it was flashbacks of number 21, Clinton-Dix. And where, Clinton-Dix would jog to the football, take poor angles, just not be interested in getting his hands dirty and going and making a play in the run game. And it was way worse for a safety. There's no question about that. But this defense needs their corners to come up and fill gaps. Like, this is 2022. This is the modern NFL. The first thing teams are going to do is they're going to try to run at the corner that doesn't want to tackle. And right now, teams are running towards Eric Stokes, and he is not interested in making a play, and it is a major issue. So that is something that very much needs to improve. On the flip side, really excited how Quay Walker played in this game. Joe Barry did a fantastic job of letting Quay Walker just play fast. There were a couple plays, one play in particular where not only does he go in the wrong direction, but he knocks a player off of, or knocks a defender off of the coverage, and was just sort of a little bit of a mess. And that's when he's still thinking through things, right? But for the vast majority of the game, Joe Barry let Quay Walker fly around, and you could see his natural instincts come out. And you could also see that the game is starting to slow down for him a little bit, which is huge. So still some hiccups, still some mistakes that need to get cleaned up here and there, but they were much less this week. And some of the things that he did, just flying to the football, getting sideline to sideline, being more aggressive, being used as a blitzer, I just love the way that they used him. And it was very, complementary to his skill set. And we're starting to see him really fly around a little bit more. This was a really good game from Quay Walker, and I think there's a lot of positives that he can take away from that. All right, that does it for my grades. Just a quick recap. Highest rated offensive players: Aaron Jones, Allen Lazard, Aaron Rodgers. Lowest graded on offense: Romeo Doubs, Yosh Nijman, Elton Jenkins. Highest on defense: Devondre Campbell, Kenny Clark, and Quay Walker. Lowest on defense: Eric Stokes, Ladarius Hamilton, and Jair Alexander. All right, so let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. So as mentioned, my third highest graded offensive player. Now, a plus 0.1 is basically a neutral grade. So you don't want your third best player to have a neutral grade, that you want them to have very high grades, much like the defenders did this week. Rodgers wasn't that. This was basically slightly above neutral. And Tom Clements basically said, he's had similar grades, for Rodgers throughout the course of this season so far. Rodgers mentioned that this was his highest grade from Clements this season. I know some took that as like in jest because clearly he's not playing up to his standard so far. I had it as at his second highest graded grade for the season so far, right behind the Bears game. I had the Bears as a plus 0.3 and this game as a plus 0.1. So yeah, I mean, trust Tom Clements on this one. I'm sure Tom has it better than I do. Let's just say that. So he had it, this one, I had it slightly in favor of the Bears, but very, very similar scores. But the truth is, Aaron Rodgers has played 60 games with Matt LaFleur. He's now played 60 games, including regular season and playoffs, with Matt LaFleur as head coach. My grades this season for Rodgers in those 60 games so far this year would have been tied for 40th, 42nd, 44th, 44th, 55th, 51st, 53rd, 55th. So 40th, 42nd, 44th, 44th, 51st, 53rd, and 55th. So all in the bottom third of grades in the 3+ years with Matt LaFleur so far. 60 games total. Not one of his grades this season would have graded in the top 40. That should tell you where Aaron Rodgers is right now. So yes, he didn't have a terrible grade. He graded slightly in the positive. It was at least in the discussion for being his best game of the season, but still nowhere near the Aaron Rodgers that we have seen with Matt LaFleur in 2019, 2020, or 2021. So yes, fine score, not a bad score. But as I've basically been saying last week, this week, I said it yesterday as well, Aaron Rodgers isn't the one to blame when you're not getting a negative grade. He's not the one that's propelling them to victories right now, and that's a problem. So before I go into the entire, plethora of points that I want to make in regards to Aaron Rodgers, just know Aaron Rodgers is a divisive topic. There are some people who will defend him to the death. There are some people that say he is to blame no matter what. And my goal today, in almost everything that I do, is to show you there is no extremes here. Aaron Rodgers is not the guy that should be, thrown under the bus as the key one to blame. Like, he just isn't. And he is not the one that is the same MVP caliber Rodgers that we have seen play over the last couple seasons. There has been a decline in his play. The truth, as it usually is somewhere in the middle. And we have to find a way to understand that it's not usually these extremes. Not one person on the one extreme that Rodgers is still MVP, GOAT, greatest of all time, he can do no wrong. That's not true. And the Rodgers is garbage, he's trash, trade him, get rid of him, bench him, put Jordan Love in. That's not true either. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Now, where on that spectrum he's at right now, I think is up for debate. And I think there can be fair conversation where he lies somewhere in that realm of still extremely good, really struggling, or something in between. But the truth is somewhere in the middle. So we have to get away from these extremes. And I know we as a society right now, we love the extremes. It's blue and red. It's, I don't even want to go into all the divisive topics that are out there right now, but that's just who we are. And it's unfortunate because almost always the real truth of everything is somewhere in the gray. We've got to get away from the far, far extremes and figure out how we can live in the gray, because that's just life. So with Aaron Rodgers, and I'm going to tell you right now, there are going to be some very big critiques of some of the things that Rodgers has put on tape and statistically so far this season. For those of you who are going to get upset by that, I would recommend sticking around until the end, because I know your comments already and what you're going to say, and I'm going to know if you listen till the end or not. So stick around, because if you're going to throw me under the bus for trying to throw Rodgers under the bus, I can tell you, you should probably wait until the end. All right, so first of all, let's go through my grades. And I have told you this before, and I will tell you it now, and I will tell you it again in the future. I know that there are people out there that do not like grades. How can you possibly grade the players when you don't know the play, you don't know how it's coached, you don't know, what the nuances of that given play and how they're supposed to react to a defender? I disagree with some of that, but there is a level of truth to that. I always give Randall Cobb's play as an example, his very first receiving touchdown. We learned after the fact that he ran the wrong route on the play. I would have had no way of knowing that had I not heard after the fact that he ran the wrong route on the play. Had I graded that game, I wasn't grading the Packers back then, but had I graded that game, I would have graded Cobb with a very large positive because he ran a great route, caught the ball, ran for a touchdown, did everything you could possibly ask, and, it was a big play in the game. That would have been a very nice positive. I'm sure his coaches were not too happy with the fact that he ran the wrong route, and he probably got some negative grade on that for running the wrong route. I couldn't have known that until they said it, basically. But normally in most situations, I wouldn't know that. But that's not what I'm grading. What I am grading is what I can see on tape. If Josh Nijman is blocking the defender across from him in a one-on-one situation, did he do his job? Did he allow pressure? Did he allow immediate pressure? Did he allow a sack fumble? Or did he stalwart his man? Did he pancake him to the ground? That one-on-one matchup I can grade with some level of, just obviousness of did he win that battle? If Jair Alexander is covering Terry McLaurin one-on-one on the outside, did McLaurin win the route? Did he gain separation? Did Jair lock him down? Did he intercept the pass? Did he bat it away? Did McLaurin take it 80 for a touchdown? I can see that one-on-one man-to-man coverage battle on the outside and say distinctively, did he win or lose that matchup? And how badly or how great did he win the matchup or lose the matchup? Those are the things that I'm looking at. I'm not necessarily looking for, did they, perfectly execute the play call, because I can't always know that. There's a lot of times you can very much tell defensively and offensively what they're trying to accomplish because of what all of the other 10 players are doing on the play. And if you have any knowledge of, playbooks and what plays they're trying to run and those sort of things, you can get a pretty good understanding of what they were trying to accomplish on that play. But that's not necessarily the goal. The goal is to try to figure out in the scheme of play, if you had the opportunity to tackle a player, did you tackle him? Did you miss the tackle? The things that you can make a real observation and a real judgment on just based on the tape. Those are the things that I'm going through and grading on a play-by-play basis. Is it perfect? No, it's not. It will never be perfect. There's just no, it's an impossibility. It's an imperfect system, no matter what. Same with PFF, same with anyone else that will try to do grades, whether they're going through and grading every play or not, or whether they're just giving an overarching grade position by position through the course of the game. No matter how you're doing it, there is going to be imperfections. I will not be the be-all end-all on it. And just because I say this person graded negatively in this game and whatever, that is not canon. It's not 100% truth that we should hold it against that player. It is my observation, nothing more, nothing less. And I think the worst thing anyone can do is think that their crap doesn't stink and I'm all knowing and my way is the way and everyone else is wrong. That's just wrong. That's the wrong way of thinking about it. What I love to do is I love to watch the tape. I love to put together my grades. I love to look at PFF's grades. I love to look at, where what the statistics say. I love to see what the film, breakdown people are saying of all right, this is who's playing well, who's not playing well. I love just to see the general consensus. I love all of it. And then I like to put together a picture and see all right, what doesn't make sense? All right, Rodgers is grading, this isn't true what I'm about to say, but Rodgers is grading great by PFF and my grades, but, DVOA and some of the analytics are saying that he's not good, whereas the fans and the pundits are saying that he's, worthy of MVP. All right, the disconnect is that the analytics say he's not good. Why is that? Can we dig into that further? I love to see the whole picture, as much of the puzzle as I possibly can, and then dig into, all right, what doesn't match up? So that being said, where I'm at with my grades, and I've used the same system now since 2018, my grade on the season for Rodgers this year is negative 2.75. We don't have to dig too far into what the numbers mean. Every play can be a +2 or a -2, and anything in between. Most plays are a +0.1 to a -0.1, somewhere in there on any given play. It can be a lot more, it can be a lot less, but usually it's in that realm, with a lot of grades being just a pure neutral 0 grade if you didn't do anything good, bad, or or ugly, positive, etc. on a given play. You're neutral at 0. In 2018, I gave Rodgers a 13.75 grade using the same grading system through all this time. 2017's was slightly different. We don't have to go over that. 2018 plus 13.75, 2019 plus 15.15, 2020 35.80, 2021 21.05, and so far this year negative 2.75. And so one thing that you should know is that if Dobbs screws something up or the offensive line screws something up and it's not Rodgers' fault, he does not get a negative for that. Now, the lack of offensive productivity in general, making it so that this offense is not getting as many explosive plays and doesn't have the playmakers, that's affecting everyone. Bad offense is going to affect everyone in some capacity because you're not making those big explosive plays. You're not getting as many touchdowns. You're not getting a lot of the big glowing positives, right? So part of that is just the fault of this entire offense. And it's so you sort of get into, all right, what came first, the chicken or the egg scenario? Is it bad because of Rodgers? Is it bad because of the offensive line? Is it bad because of the scheme? Right now, it's just all very bad, and there's levels of blame to go around. But when I'm grading, same with PFF, we're grading just simply based on what Rodgers could have done on that given play. And I've said this before as well. If the protection breaks down and his receivers aren't open and Rodgers throws the ball away, statistically, that's going to show up as 0 for 1 on the stat sheet. There is no negative grade on that whatsoever because he didn't have a receiver open. He could not have gotten, he had immediate pressure. He couldn't have, bought time, and he did the best thing he possibly could, which was throw the ball away. In fact, that could possibly grade in the positive. So in the stat sheet, 0 for 1. In the grade sheet, either neutral or maybe even a positive because he did the best he could have in that given scenario. So if you think that, just because his protection is bad and just because his receivers haven't been the same, that means that he's going to grade in the negative, that's just not the case. This is just Aaron Rodgers' grade on what he could have done on the given play. And so far, if the system has said for the last 4 years, my system, that he was really good in 2018, better in 2019, phenomenal in 2020, and extremely good in 2021, which is basically what everyone believes, then maybe give the system some credit and be like, okay, the negative 2.75 is probably fairly telling that things are not going great for Aaron Rodgers so far this year. You don't want to believe me? That's totally fine. Like I said, I'm not the be all end all. You can disagree with that. I get it. I understand it. I'm imperfect, and maybe somebody else's system is better. So let's look at Pro Football Focus. Aaron Rodgers, per Pro Football Focus, has a 73.2 grade so far this year, which is good for 11th best in the NFL. Surprise, surprise. He's, per Pro Football Focus, the 11th best quarterback in the NFL. That doesn't sound so bad. However, it is worth mentioning that it is his lowest grade since he has taken over as a starter, going back to his, 2008? Yeah, 2008, his very first time as a starter. He's never had a grade this low. Even in his very first season in 2008, it was not at this point. So this is the lowest that it's ever been for him as a starter per Pro Football Focus. The quarterbacks in the 70 to 73 range per Pro Football Focus so far this year: Daniel Jones, Davis Mills, Mitch Trubisky, Jacoby Brissett, and Aaron Rodgers. Those are the 5 that are ranked between 70 and 73. So that's the company that he is in right there. And the biggest thing, and I think the biggest telling thing for, just overall statistic, analytic, whatever you want to call it, from Pro Football Focus or from their grades, is that when he has been kept clean in the pocket, because I will be the first to tell you this offensive line has been an unmitigated nightmare, is the biggest issue on the team, is the biggest thing that needs to get cleaned up. It is not Rodgers. It is not the defense. It is not the special teams. It is by far and away the offensive line. We can talk about weapons. We can talk about getting Aaron Jones the ball more. We can talk about Rodgers' struggles, but the offensive line is the 1A issue so far this year. In fact, I have a positive grade on the team so far this year, except for the offensive line. The offensive line so far this year, basically a neutral grade so far, I should say. So the offensive line, negative 20.55. Negative 20.55. The rest of the offense combined, negative 1.65. And the defense is at a exact neutral grade so far. So defense neutral, offense almost neutral, except for the abysmal play of the offensive line. But going back to Pro Football Focus, when Aaron Rodgers has been kept clean, meaning he has a completely clean pocket, per Pro Football Focus, he has a 73.9 grade. Last year was 92.7. The year before that, 98.1. Before that, 91.1. Before that, 91.8. And since he became a starter, only one season per Pro Football Focus did he have a grade under 90 when he was kept clean. And that was in 2017 when it was an 80.6. Every other year was 90 or above, which is extremely good. And this year, 73.9. So while everything with the offensive line is breaking down and the weapons are clearly not there, when he has been kept clean in the pocket and has the ability to look downfield and find targets, his grade is a 73.9, the worst of his career by a significant margin per Pro Football Focus. Now, on the flip side of that, when he's been kept clean so far this year, his passing statistics, 138 of 192, 71.9% completion percentage, almost 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks, no sacks, and a 101.4 rating. So not too shabby. Keep him clean, and maybe the grade isn't as great as we'd expect it. The 2 interceptions certainly hurt and are uncharacteristic of Rodgers. But like a 101.4 rating with that level of success, if you keep him clean, you're probably going to start seeing more results, and he's probably going to start gaining trust in the offensive line and keeping his eyes downfield more, going through his progressions more. So I think it is very fair to say that this is still pointing in the direction of keep him clean and good things are going to happen, but it's also noteworthy that he is never graded anywhere near this poorly, which is still not like a brutal grade by any means. It's still a positive grade, but anywhere near this bad in any previous season. In any previous season since he's been the starter. Not even close. And every year he's had a 90 or better grade per Pro Football Focus when he's been kept clean, and right now it's nowhere near that. How about his on-target throw rate? So just when, how often he's completing throws on target. It is at a 4-year low per Pro Football Focus, while his bad throw rate is the lowest that it's been throughout that time as well, which means he is throwing less on-target throws in the last 4 years. And this is the highest that his bad throw rate has been, meaning he's throwing more bad throws, which means behind a receiver, incompletions that have the opportunity to be completed, just inaccurate passes. So his accuracy is down and his inaccuracy is up. And that doesn't necessarily have to correlate. Like you can have on-target throws that are just incomplete, but it's like his bad throws are actually also up this year and over the last 4 seasons. So that is a issue as well. How about this? Per True Media Sports, Rodgers, when throwing past the line of scrimmage and outside the numbers, has a 53.4% completion percentage only this year and a 24.1% inaccurate throw percentage. So when he's throwing past the line of scrimmage and outside the numbers, he's really struggling so far this year. To put that into perspective, last year he had a 67.5% completion percentage and only a 17% inaccurate throw percentage. And the year before that, in 2020, he had a 71.3% completion percentage and a 11.8% inaccurate throw percentage. So he has over doubled his inaccurate throw percentage from 2020 to 2022. And he's cut his completion percentage by almost, 18 points? Those are some damning numbers. Just complete different quarterback than what we saw over the last 2 seasons. How about this? His average depth of target, 7.0. So 7 yards is his average depth of target this year. That is the second lowest of his career. This past Sunday, Aaron Rodgers' average depth of target from a clean pocket, when he was clean, when he was not being hit, was 4 yards down the field. 4 yards was his average depth of target. 10 of his 35 attempts this past week were behind the line of scrimmage, and those 10 throws went for a total of 29 yards. So this is a really bad horizontal passing attack that's struggling to get vertical. We've covered that ad nauseum. But this is just rough numbers. And it's not just Aaron Rodgers. We'll go over that in just a moment. But this is clearly a quarterback and a passing offense that is declining. It's just very clear that this is not the same quarterback that we saw in 2020 and 2021, and not the same offense that we saw in 2020 and 2021. I think you can make, and if we can't get past this part that I'm about to tell you right here, I don't know what to tell you. From just a pure physical standpoint, he is not the same. His finger is hurt, which is, I think, very clearly playing a factor, but his arm is clearly not as strong as it used to be. And it's still a very sound arm. Like, I'm not saying he's got a noodle of an arm and he just can't throw anymore. Like, we're not talking Peyton Manning last year of his career. Like, you could barely throw the ball down the field. He's got a really good arm. There's no question about that. But it is nowhere near the 2010, 2011, 2012, zip that he could just throw any ball in a complete rope and just fit it into anywhere he wanted. It's not the same arm, right? As mentioned, the thumb is, I'm sure, affecting it. And then the other thing is that he's just not mobile anymore, not to the extent that he used to be. And I'm not talking about like scrambling. Like, if he gets an alley, he can still scramble for a few yards, but like he used to get like these would be 15, 20 yard gains. And now he can't break the pocket. His biggest weapon was when teams would get up the field and he could do the little thing where he like stepped up in the pocket and could get to the outside. He can't do that anymore. And that's been a major loss in his ability to win and to just play like extremely MVP caliber football. So just physically, if you want to ignore all the statistics, if you want to ignore all the grades, we have to at least agree that he just isn't the same as he used to be from a mobility and a arm strength standpoint. So, and again, the fingers hurt as well. So my argument has been, and I'll say it one more time, Aaron Rodgers is not the reason that they are losing. But the expectation for Aaron Rodgers, based on his salary and his importance and the standard being the standard, is that he needs to be the core reason that they are winning. And he is not. And you could make the argument that if without him, do they even win the 3 games that they've won already? And that's a fair argument. I will listen to that argument. But based on what the expectations were for Rodgers going into this season, based on his recent performance, the thought is that he would be able to elevate the play of the players around him and be the MVP caliber quarterback that's going to lift everyone on offense along with Matt LaFleur. And that hasn't been the case. And while, again, I want to be very clear, I don't think he is the reason they are losing. He's just not a big enough reason why they can win games or overcome some of the other deficiencies that they have on offense. And that was the expectation going into the year. And he has not met that expectation and clearly has taken a step back individually. If, again, we go over even when he's clean, even when he's protected, even when he has receivers open downfield, he just hasn't been the same assassin that we're used to at quarterback. And it's okay to say that. Now, for those who are saying and defending Rodgers, well, he's injured. The offensive line is awful. The weapons are clearly not the same. If you gave Aaron Rodgers a fantastic supporting cast, I guarantee you he would be fantastic. He'd be great. The scheme isn't working as it should. The coaching's been an issue. Like, how about we talk about that, Andy, and not just Aaron Rodgers? You're right. You are 1,000,000% right. He is hurt. He is banged up. The offensive line has been awful. The weapons are not what they should be. Brian Gutekunst has not done an adequate job of replacing Davante Adams. He took 3 swings in the draft in Watson and Dobbs and Toure. He went out and got a veteran wide receiver in Sammy Watkins, and the ROI has not been good enough on those 4. And maybe it will be. Maybe Watson and Dobbs end up being phenomenal wide receivers. Maybe Watkins gets back healthy and can be a real impact receiver the remainder of the season. But through 7 games, even with Dobbs far exceeding a 4th-round pick expectations through this point of his career, even with that being the case, you are nowhere near the losses of MVS and clearly Davante Adams, and to a lesser extent, Equanimeous St. Brown. Like, you lost those 3 receivers and you have done nothing to come remotely close to replacing them. Robert Tonyan has not made a massive impact coming back from injury, and the offensive line has been extremely worse. It just hasn't been good enough around Rodgers. So that's true. The weapons are not what they should be. And yes, if you gave Rodgers a great cast, I bet he would be great. If you gave him the 2020 cast with Davante Adams in his prime, David Bakhtiari in his prime, Elton Jenkins playing really great, Corey Linsley in his prime, Billy Turner, Rick Wagner, Robert Tonyan's coming out party, Mercedes Lewis at tight end, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, AJ Dillon, MVS, all of it, I would say, yeah, guess what? I bet we would not be having this conversation about Aaron Rodgers. I think that's true as well. The scheme hasn't been as effective as it has in the past. It hasn't evolved to the level that it needs to be. Now, to be fair, there's not a ton of answers there, and I don't think the coaches have held the players accountable enough. So all of those arguments that you are making for Aaron Rodgers and defending him and saying, well, what about all these things? You're right. Those are all very fair arguments and all things that need to get cleaned up. And for those of you who are arguing against Rodgers and saying, yeah, in some of the things we just said, but Andy, he's struggling even when he is protected, or physically he's not the same. He's missing some of the layups that we're not used to seeing him miss. He's completely avoiding the middle of the field. He lacks the mobility he once had. He's not throwing consistently down the field. All of those things still, to some extent, are true. We haven't seen the same quarterback, and it's okay to say that. It's a very, the bar he set for himself is insanely freaking high, and he hasn't come close to meeting that bar so far through 7 games. There is still 10 games left, and he might play out of his mind the remainder of the season, and we might look back at this and say, remember when he was kind of struggling through 7 games and we thought that the sky was falling? That's crazy. Or he could continue, and this could be the worst season of his career statistically, analytically, etc. We just don't know. But it's fair to say he's not the same. And all those arguments, to some extent, are also true. Davante Adams not being replaced, and if you want to make the argument, Davante Adams made Aaron Rodgers, or he can't win and can't be the same without Davante Adams. There's a level of truth to those two were just such like a synergistic duo that they could do so many things together, that he is sort of Batman without his Robin. He's Jordan without his Pippen. They haven't replaced him, then there is a loss, and he's not been the same without Davante Adams. There's a level of truth to that. All of it is true. And the truth of everything in this scenario, whether it's Rodgers is a bum, he can't play anymore, bench him, Jordan Love should start, etc., or Rodgers is still the GOAT, MVP, it's, Gutekunst and LaFleur and everyone else let him down, those extremes are false on both sides. The truth, as I said at the onset, is somewhere in the middle. Everything around him has not been up to par and up to expectation. And it is tough to take a quarterback at this stage of his career and say, hey, everything else on offense kind of sucks right now. You've got Aaron Jones, but you and Aaron are going to have to do all the heavy lifting, and we're not going to really give Aaron Jones the ball that much. So good luck. You're not doing him any favors, and you're doing Aaron Rodgers a disservice. That's all true. Rodgers, when he's had the opportunities to survey the field, make his checks at the line of scrimmage, hit his wide receivers down the field, and just go out and make plays, hasn't done that to the level that we've expected either. And that's okay to say, and that's okay to admit. I hope that he crushes it the remainder of this season. I hope that he kills it. I hope that he wins an MVP, a Super Bowl MVP, and rides off into the sunset. That would be just freaking swell. No doubt about it. And I think, again, and it's sort of as I talked about yesterday, we get into these tribes. We get into either Rodgers is terrible or he's the greatest, and there's no in between. And either, anyone that attacks Rodgers is the worst person in the world, or anyone that thinks he's still good is the worst person in the world. There is a middle ground, I promise you, and almost everyone is still in some capacity hoping that he can be the player that leads this team to the promised land and has a phenomenal rest of the season. In the meantime, it's okay to say that the team around him is not doing the best job of supporting him, and he has not held up his end of the bargain of really supporting the rest of his team to the level that he's generally been capable of. That's it. It's okay. That's where we're at. And what happens the remainder of the season, it remains to be seen. And I'll say it one last time. Everyone, literally everyone needs to be better. They don't have to be exponentially better. They just need to do their job, their 1/11th, and just get a little bit better. And if that happens, if Dobbs and Watson start hanging on to the balls that are thrown to them down the field and not running the incorrect routes, if the offensive line just holds on a tick longer and could give Rodgers just a little bit more time and not be performing far below expectations, if, they can continue to give Aaron Jones the football a little bit more, if the defense can not make stupid mistakes and have scoring drives in the second half where they can't get off the field, if the special teams can quit shooting themselves in the foot, if they can start winning the turnover battle, all of a sudden you are going to see a team that turns around very quickly. And I'll say it one last time, this is not on just one person. Everything needs to change. Everything needs to be better. And that is a part of that equation is Aaron Rodgers. And I'll leave it at that. It's just that simple. And it doesn't have to be vitriolic or attacking Rodgers or anything like that, because he's been really great for an extremely long time, but he hasn't been great so far this season. And I think he can be. I hope that he will be, but it's going to take everyone working on the same page in order to make that happen. That's going to do it for me today. I appreciate you joining me. This is never an easy topic, but I'm glad we went over it anyway, because I think it's important to do so. So I'll be right back here tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.